Welcome back. We are at final assembly time. I know in the last video we already had most of these already assembled in the case, but I decided I needed to do a little more scraping to get some old gasket material and the like off the case, so I took everything back out. But it gives me a chance to kind of give everything a once over one last time before we put this all back together. Let's go ahead and get started. Diff in. Pinion shaft in. Sometimes you got to give it a little help and pull the diff back a little bit till it slots in. Input shaft. Just sneak that under this extra large first gear. There we go. And I did also off camera swap the nice reverse gear off of the 02S. I mean, if I had a good 02J already on the shaft laying around, they would have been fine. I could have just used that, but I needed this shaft to mate with the 02J upper bearing support. So, and it just looks so good, I had to use that that wheel. So we got that wheel swapped, but this clip, it always expands too much even after you try to compress it back. Then in the process of trying to put it back on, it's still kind of expanded. So we have to make extra sure that it seats all the way into this gear during assembly, because it probably won't just drop right in like it does with the original setup that was untouched. So we get our reverse gear into place and get the idler shaft in, and sure enough, oh, actually that time it went. So that clip went in and it recessed into that gear, so that's exactly what we want. So we're good to go there. And get our upper bearing support. Have to move the input shaft out of the way just a little bit. Slot that on. And then let's retrieve the rest of our reverse gear apparatus here and our selector. Get that installed. And there is this little kind of a pin that sticks out and needs to slot in this hole in the case. It's just a way to keep this from rotating around so easily since it's only held in by one bolt. Just want to make sure that's lined up in there the way it's supposed to be. And looks like the same T45 bolt they've been using since the 02As. I can only find my T45 bit, right? Too many rags over here. All right. Now we have to put on our selector, and again this whole selector assembly is out of the 02S because this upper fork has the cutout already to allow the shifter to go into the 6th gear position. The 02J version does not. So gotta make sure that these are all rotating freely. There's no obvious wear in any of them, so that all looks good. And this bottom one, these tabs go into the slot. That's part of the 1 and 2 selector. These go into the slot for the 3/4 selector. And then we have, actually I'm upside down right now. This one here, it's going to be for reverse. It'll just go right on top, that piece. Like so. Now this doesn't want to stay so easily. All right, little interruption there, but I was in the middle of saying that what's kind of neat about this upper bearing support piece for the reverse shaft, it actually has this nice little hook on it, and it actually holds the selector kind of in place during assembly of the case. So it's actually some nice little touch that Volkswagen added that makes assembly that tiny bit easier. But since I'm using a 02J case back half, there's no extra machining provision for this to go right there. Although interesting is, I have a it's an EGR code casing back half that I have, and it's one of the very few that I've seen where it actually has this extra piece of casting here, like and this whole bottom webbing is all just like what the 0A4 uses, so it's kind of like a weird hybrid casting of sorts from a very late O2J, I guess. Kind of interesting, but so while they actually have the casting here for where the bolt hole would be drilled for this piece, there's no finished machining work on the other side for it to actually fit in there. But if I use the 0A4 case back half, that would have worked okay, but then I would have this bolt hole all the way back here for the shift linkage bracket, so that wouldn't work out so great. So just kind of pick and choose your battle, I guess. I have seen an O2S clone put together with a 0A4 case back half before, and all they did was, you know, since I didn't have this casting here, they just had like a 90-degree bracket that this bell housing bolt would run through and come up over the top and make a bolt hole approximately in the same spot. So that would have worked too. So you can use the 0A4 02S case back half. It is a 0A4 part number, and that would have worked just fine. But I'm going with the 02J route, so I'm using this 02J reverse idler shaft upper bearing support and the shaft itself from the 02J. But everything else internally here is from the 02S. So let's go ahead and get some sealant slapped on here and then start getting this assembled. All right, emergency trip to Napa done. We got fresh tube of sealant. We got it already applied after I cleaned off the old stuff that was just not really working out too well. Our selector really does want to slide off a little too easily, so I at least tried to stuff a rag under here just so gravity would assist me just a little bit during reassembly, just so it doesn't flop off as I'm trying to put the two case halves together. But that's where we're at right now. I got, you know, our magnet's been removed and cleaned, put back in. I've retrieved my 5th and 6th gear parts as well. Pulled this magnet out. It's got a kind of cool little bracket in there that just snaps it in place. There's little tangs on either side of it. Otherwise it looks like the exact same magnet that the bell housing has. So that's kind of neat. But other than that, let's just get this thing assembled. It is assembly day. Okay, I think that stayed in place as well as it could have. Oh shit. You know, one thing I really wanted to do? I drilled this hole for a reason. It was to install the trough from the O2S. So, oops. Take that back off. Barely compressed the sealant, so it'll be fine. It'll go back on okay. So this guy just going to insert into the hole in the back there, but also clips into this little notch that was already there in the bell housing, interestingly enough, so I didn't have to modify anything additional. But yeah, there's clips on there. Make sure that's snapped in down there. And yeah, I could practically pick the case up by that thing now, so it's in there good. We got our little oiling mod done. I'm going to drip oil all the way in our 5th gear container. Just cool. So yeah, well, let's actually get this on. Selector still looks okay. Ooh, it is almost off of 1st gear though. That wouldn't be cool. Okay, we look better now. Okay, just like so. Don't need that there anymore. think I grabbed one too many bolts. All right, throw that in there. With that done, the main thing to do next is, I can get the bolts in for our reverse. This bolt won't be used anymore, obviously, but we need this guy. It's kind of the longer of the T45 screws. And then there was this one, the black one with the shorter head, that's going to drop into the case here for the reverse idler. So we'll go ahead and, kind of fish in here first, get that piece to line up, run the bolt in. Got a little bit of sealant in my hands. And then drop our bolt in here. Like so. And then we got to get all of our selector pins installed. These are from the 02S. I'm still going to use them on the 02J. They have this slot so they should be able to fit a bolt hole of, that's away from the casting if it came down to it. So they obviously intended these to fit multiple different casings. The 02J ones, they usually just have a bolt that's only out to here, basically, so that they don't have this extended portion. But some of the 02Js have these, later ones anyway, have these extended guys as it is. And they still fit and work just fine. Get all our old O-rings off there. We got some new ones to go on. One, two, three, four. So I've deliberately, of course, left off this bottom casting at first as well, because it can help you fish around to get this reverse upper bearing support lined up. And B, can help you line these, the whole selector arm that's in there. You got to line up the bearing holes. It's really hard to see, but you got to line up those bearings with these pins. So I have to kind of reach inside, pull up on that selector arm assembly to get it to line up. You have to wiggle it around a bit, and you can feel it kind of start. And actually, I could still reach in from the opposite side to get the other side started too. Although this is looking a little iffy. Let me see if I think I should have started with this underside one first. These really don't want to. Pot thickens. Well, hell, that could be a problem. I think they might have changed the length of these. Well, they kind of look like they're lining up okay on this side, but I'm not really getting it to go where it needs to be on the other side. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, this is definitely fighting me a good bit more than they normally do. Not sure why. Yeah, mess around with it some more. Maybe it'll go. Yeah, this end in particular. Definitely much more of a fight than normal. maybe I should have opted for the 0A4 back half. I didn't think that the alignment of these pinholes had changed at all, because even this one, like I said earlier, this casting looks exactly like the 0A4. They just didn't do some of the finished machine work to do, like, you know, the bolt that goes here for the reverse bearing support. But yeah, that's pretty bizarre. I don't think I've ever had one of these fight me so bad. I'm trying to get it lined up. That's wild. I'm gonna try a little bit more, but there, I might have to actually give up. It's possible I have to grab the 0A4 casing half and make myself a little bracket for that shift spot. Interesting. Well, Murphy has struck again. Just when you think you're close to the finish line, you get thrown a curveball. So, looking at our two cases, got our 0A4 on the right, /02S, and our 02J on the left. I started measuring between, say, you know, one part that you should be exactly the same spot is this lower bearing support for the shift tower. So I assume that's in the same spot. So I started measuring from these bolt holes to the nearest shift pin, and I'm coming up with, especially in this upper one, this one's a good 10 millimeters further forward than it is in the 0A4 case. And this lower one, you can see they're not even perfectly in line with each other. This one's slightly further forward, so I think it was more like a 7 or 6 or 7 millimeter difference from the bottom one to that bolt hole. Because on the 02J, these do look like they are exactly parallel with each other here. But the 0A4, it's offset, and they're both closer to that casting anyway. So my main idea now is, well, I have two options really. I can either use the 0A4 case and then have to reset my pinion and, or no, not the pinion. The pinion would actually be fine because it's set to the bell housing and that plate. But the differential and input shaft preloads would have to be reset. And then I would also have to fabricate some kind of bracket. Let me actually get this out of my hands. I have to fabricate a bracket that goes on that bolt hole to kind of make a makeshift bolt hole up here for the shift bracket, because obviously on the 0A4s that bolt hole's all the way down here and it needs to be up here for a Mark IV shift bracket. So I think what I'm going to do is, I don't want to reset my bearing tolerances one more time, so my idea right now is to take this whole selector assembly, and I think I'm going to swap the entire set of rails off of this onto a 02J assembly. Ooh, I don't even know if that's possible. Look at the spacing there. That, I don't know. That might not work. The very minimum, would need to swap the upper one to be able to select 6th gear. But they also, the way they're secured on here is completely different. They don't have the E-clips on here. So yeah, definitely conundrum. I will have to kind of play with things a little bit and see what I can come up with. But it's definitely unfortunate. That is not what I expected to have happen.